Before we get to Brandon and Joe from ADP, I do want to introduce Grant Beach. I think most of you know Grant. Grant's our director of finance here at Pay Compass, and with that comes a lot of different things. Obviously, he's the most popular man in the company on residual day, but also he really has a great insight into kind of payroll and our payroll offering. And why we partner with ADP. And so I want to turn it over to Grant just to give us some context about today's Toolbox Tuesday. So take it away, Grant.
Thanks, John. Yeah, as John mentioned, one of the avenues or areas that I specialize in is payroll. I do that along with Junior Volrath, and we have kind of taken the payroll bull by the horns here. We partnered with ADP about a year ago, and a lot of the focus at the time was really finding a partner that offered all the strengths and capacities that we needed. I know Justin and team spent a lot of time really looking at a lot of different partners and really scrutinizing who was going to be the best fit. And ADP was always kind of top tier, at all of those conversations, always kind of fit the boxes that we need, a lot of the back end support that Junior and I need to be able to complete our daily routines. And as we've kind of discovered, the system is very seamless and pretty easy to use. And everybody that we've kind of shown it to has been pretty impressed with the capacity and ability to very seamlessly run payroll. So we're very happy with our business partners at ADP. Brandon, and I'm not sure if Rachel's on the call, have been great to work with. Always super helpful, always super kind and willing to answer any questions that we have. And we look forward to being able to support the payroll merchants that come in and whatever questions you guys have from this.
All right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Again, if you have any questions as we go, feel free to drop those in the chat, or you can unmute yourself when we come to that part of the presentation. At this point, I do want to turn it over to Brandon on the call with us, but I'm going to turn it over to Joe Fellows from ADP, who is here to help us with Toolbox Tuesday. So take it away at this point, Joe.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having us and for having me here today. My role in the company here at ADP is a particular one, and just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I also sold payroll for about 4 years. Like Brandon, obviously Brandon is a completely different animal when it comes to being a payroll rep. So you guys have one of the best as a partner here. But I also was a manager, a sales executive, similar to Rachel. We were peers for almost 3.5 years. So, I'm always a resource as well for the payroll aspect of things, anything that you guys need. But what we're going to be here to talk about today is going to be the tax credit practice that ADP offers to our clients. And not only that, but it's also something that can be a standalone product for clients if they are not using ADP for payroll. Obviously, the goal is that they're with ADP for payroll, but this is something that can be standalone and is something that really differentiates us from the competition, is going to help you guys also differentiate yourself when talking to clients out in the marketplace. So the R&D tax credit, what is it? How does it work? How can it be applicable to you guys? That's what we're going to go over here today. And I am fully expecting there to be plenty of questions at the end, just due to the nature and the process of the credit itself, and maybe some particular clients come to mind that are going to bring some thoughts that you might want to share or questions you might want to have answered. By all means, I welcome those questions at the end. And if something hits you later on, feel free to email me. We'll make sure my contact information is shared at the end so that you guys can go through it. So like I mentioned, I've been with the company here for over 7.5 years. I'm a corporate sales manager here for R&D. I cover Arizona, New Mexico, and El Paso. So very familiar with the space. And I know that a lot of you are around other parts of the country. Just everything as we're talking about this, feel free to send everything to Brandon. And if you have any questions directly, send it directly to me as well. But diving into what the R&D credit is, right? So I put this slide in here because it's good to understand how this stacks up against other federal tax expenditures that are available for small businesses. Number one, the R&D tax credit is something that's growing year over year. We talk about WOTC, which is the Work Opportunity Tax Credit, other energy credits. Those are kind of some of the bigger credits that are available. The R&D tax credit is growing year over year. And just last year in 2022, the government actually doled out $13 billion. $13 billion in government spend to businesses who are doing R&D. Now, what's interesting about this is that only 1/3 of companies that are eligible for the credit actually are taking the credit today. So what does that mean? You guys can be talking to a client that is doing an R&D activity within their business that they could be getting money back for, and they're just missing the boat, right? So if we're backing into some simple math, that means there's about 30 to 40 billion dollars with a B that's being left on the table that you could be the rock star for your client that helps them realize that they're eligible for the credit. And that's what I'm here today to talk about, how you can identify those opportunities and how we can get those together to win. So I'll skip through the history because it will explain it on this slide, but the credit itself was actually established in 1981, and the spirit of the program was meant to be for companies to keep their workers in the United States. So a lot of companies in the 80s were shipping jobs overseas for cheaper labor. The United States said, hey, we want to keep those jobs in the United States. We want to incentivize those companies to do so. And with R&D, a lot of those companies had really high wages. Typically, they're going to be engineers. They're going to be scientists. They're going to be software developers. Those are the people that they wanted to keep those wages in the United States. And that's where this credit genesis came from. So this credit is meant to reward companies that are investing in R&D activities, developing a new product, improving products, processes, formulas, techniques, or software. The intent, as I mentioned, was to innovate and keep jobs on U.S. soil. And because only 1/3 of companies that qualify for the credit today are actually taking it, they're allowing companies to retroactively claim this credit 3 years in the rear view. So if you're talking to a company and they're like, oh my God, I'm actually building an application today, and I didn't realize that I could get an R&D credit back for this activity that I'm spending money on. Well, if they've been developing it for the last 2 years, we can go back and we can claim that R&D credit for the last 2 years plus the current year, and you might help them stumble upon $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 back for their time and effort, right? That's a huge differentiator. It's a great way for you guys to win. And when we're looking at the credit on a federal level, it's typically about 6 to 8% of their US-based cost tied to development. And they can monetize that credit either through an income tax liability offset, or if they're in the first 5 years of their company and they're under $5 million in gross revenue, they can take it as a payroll tax liability offset. If we're looking into retro years, there will be a refund that'll be doled out by the IRS, but that's more for the conversation with me. I tell you guys this information so that you have a little bit of a peek behind the curtain when you're having the conversation. Now, this is probably the biggest piece for you guys to understand, because while these 4 industries are not the end all be all, these 4 industries are where you're going to find a lot of R&D activities coming from. Software, manufacturing, engineering, pharmaceuticals, biotechnology, those are going to be the big breadwinners here. But there's a little asterisk next to software, because software really can find its tentacles into so many different aspects of business. And I'll give you an example. I was actually sitting down with a pest control company about 2 weeks ago, and the gentleman was tired of utilizing the same software that he's been using for the past decade. It's mundane. Everybody hates it. And so he decided, well, I've got quite a bit of money. I'm going to go out and I'm actually going to hire some developers who are going to create my own software. we sat down because we were having a conversation for payroll, and he told us a story about the software because he thought our software was pretty slick with ADP. And I said, "Hey, are you doing all this with US based developers?" He said, "Yeah." We're able to get him a $30,000 tax credit back because of the money he's spending on creating that software here in the United States, right? So when we're looking at things and you guys are out there in the field talking with clients, if they're falling within these industries, there's an opportunity to potentially bring this back as an R&D tax credit opportunity to win bigger business, get money back for the client, and look like the rock star, right? If we're hearing words like faster, more efficient, we're developing, we're trying to make it cheaper, we're trying to be a greener company, we're trying to modify things, we're piloting, we're patenting, those are great buzzwords that are going to also lead us down the path of R&D, right? So how do we determine the eligibility for the R&D credit? The R&D credit is based off of a 4-part test that falls into these 4 pieces that are on the screen here. So everything that I'm looking at in terms of activity is being pulled through the prism of, is there a permitted purpose? So is the activity related to the development or the improvement of functionality, performance, reliability, or quality for the product, process, software, formula, technique, or invention? Is there some sort of technological nature to what is being done? So, is there a hard science, not a soft science, a hard science? And I'll make the distinction because, oftentimes they say, oh, well, coding a website with content. That would be a soft science because it's more along the lines of aesthetics. But if you're building a website that's coding in order to develop a software, that's where the computer science aspect comes into play, and it's technological in nature. Elimination of uncertainty. These last two, elimination of uncertainty and the process of experimentation, they are the 2 most important pieces when we're looking at qualifying for an R&D activity. Because number one, that elimination of uncertainty means that when you set out to do what you were learning and hoping to do, you didn't know what the final result was going to be, and it wasn't just general know-how that got you there. Was there trial and error? Was there simulation? Was there modeling or conceptualization, right? So I like to use the example of a beer brewery that we actually worked with for R&D, right? Now, not every brewery is doing this, but some breweries are out there trying to push the cutting edge when it comes to beer, right? So they came out, they wanted to develop a beer that was going to have less hops, but was going to carry over longer when it came to them not having to bring in more batches, right? They wanted to have a longer lasting beer that would stay in the can and it would stay fresher longer. So that's their permitted purpose. They had to use physical science, biological science, engineering in order to do that. Their uncertainty was they didn't know how they were going to do it. They had to go through multiple different iterations of types of beer and types of formulas and ingredients and things that were going to last within there. And then lastly, there was a process of experimentation where they had to try 10 to 12 different iterations before they got it right. Right. So that time and effort that was put into that single beer is ultimately an R&D activity that they were able to qualify to get the credit back. Right. Same thing if we're looking at software, someone who's developing a software for a business and they don't know exactly how they're going to get to the final result. I'm sure if anybody knows someone who does coding here, there is a very low chance that someone codes something correctly the first time. There is going to be multiple different iterations of code that needs to take place in order for them to get to the final result. And so oftentimes if we're hearing about things like developing software or DevOps, those are going to be great opportunities for us to talk about R&D. So qualifying the cost, this is a wage-based credit. So the way that we back into the number that they're eligible for is by looking at the amount of wages that were used to pursue the activity for R&D. That can be W-2 or 1099 wages. And then we can also include other things like supplies. That can also include cloud hosting. So using example, wages for any personnel who conduct or directly supervise or directly support qualified activities. If they're using 80% of their time towards the qualified activities, then we can just go ahead and take 100% of their wages and put it towards the credit. Anything less than 80%, then we're using a time allocation percentage. So if Johnny, Joe, and Jim are working at the brewery and they're testing things as it goes, and only 40% of their time is being taken towards that, then we're using 40% of their wages towards the credit. But if we have a master beer maker, a brewer, and he's taking 100% of his time, we're taking 100% of his wages towards the credit itself. As well, we can include 1099 wages into the process. So if there's any 1099s coming in to help develop or support those research activities, we can include them into the process, and we can take 65% of what they're making and include it towards the credit. And then, as I mentioned, any supplies that are tangible, non-capitalized equipment, we can include those into the cost of the credit. So why partner with ADP? I know I gave you guys a ton of background on what the credit is, but really this is what you guys should pay attention for when it comes to how this is going to help you guys win in the field. So number one, anytime we're talking about taxes or money back or credits, they're going to be wanting to talk about that with their account, right? This is a very, very pro CPA conversation and pro CPA process. We want to work with their accountant when they're having this conversation. So we're not trying to be independent of that. We want to be a complement and work with them to help their client get the most money back for the R&D credit. It is a free assessment, okay? So there is no cost for them to evaluate if this is a fit for them. So this is risk-free, and this is very, very unique in this industry because a lot of accountants that are doing R&D tax credits, they have to bill even if they're looking exploratorily. So that means that you can go in and we can take the time to look for the credit for a client and spend man hours on man hours and find nothing, and the client is getting billed $0. Okay. So this is a great value prop for those clients. We have one of the quickest turnaround times in the industry. We can do a full R&D study, which is required to be given to the IRS as a business case as to why they are eligible for the credit. And we can turn that around in 3 to 6 weeks, whereas most of our competitors will take 3 to 6 months just to do the same thing. We have a deep team of deep technical expertise in the R&D credit. We have over 250 accounting professionals, scientists, engineers, attorneys, and other specialists that are employed by ADP. And when it comes to the fee structure, it can be kind of different between each one. But what I will tell you is that it includes full audit support, and there is a success-based fee. So we are only billing if we find them the credit, right? And then lastly, brand and reputation. The same reason why Pay Compass is working with ADP today is because of our technology, our brand, and our reputation. Is the same reason why these clients are going to want to work with you and with us to determine if they can get this credit back. And they will have a dedicated team that will help them do so. So when we're looking at the project lifecycle, all it takes is a 20 to 40 minute project scoping call. That is where I come in. That's where I'm going to be determining if there is a estimated credit that we can actually utilize, try to figure out what that credit amount would be, determine their eligibility. Then from there, we dive into a credit analysis call, which is essentially just a welcome call. Hey, here's your team. Here's how they're going to be handling the credit for you. We're going to be delivering you the R&D package. From there, the credit package is delivered. And then if there's any audit support needed after that, it's included. And we provide all of that for free, included in our cost. So the next steps, really what we're looking for is just to try to have these free assessments with these clients. If they're in those particular industries, if they are doing something that catches your ear in terms of R&D and research and development activities, get them in touch with Brandon or myself to have a conversation. And if everything sounds good for them and we're able to determine the credit, it's as simple as us delivering a master service agreement for them to sign, collecting 3 years of tax returns, and we're off to the races. So I know that I had a right around 20, 30 minutes. I wanted to get through this so that if we had any questions, we could do so. I gave you guys back about 9 to 10 minutes. What questions do we have?
And I'll hop in real quick and just remind everybody, feel free to unmute yourself and really ask a question either about the R&D credit or about ADP and their payroll solutions in general. We're kind of wide open on questions. If you don't feel like asking it by unmuting yourself, just drop it in the chat, and I'll be able to ask it for you. So I'll shut up. So
here's a question for you. So how is this? I mean, how, like, if I run into an ADP rep, can we work together? Is that what we're saying, or no?
I'm sorry, say that again.
So I'm in a market where there's a lot of ADP reps.
Sure.
So is this something where we can collaborate, or is that something completely different, other than the research thing?
Yeah. So anything research related, obviously, feel free to reach out to me about the research. I can also get that in touch with whoever the R&D specialist is in that area. Brandon, how do you typically handle any referrals that are coming through?
Normally, anything that's Pay Compass from a Pay Compass rep would normally just go through either Grant or John, just so we can get preferred pricing, which they'll discuss with you further. But yeah, I mean, John and Grant, I guess I'll kind of leave that one to you on how you would want to work that. But yeah, we essentially have like a preferred relationship with Pay Compass so that your client gets the best possible pricing.
Yeah, I guess I think of Steven, not to diminish your question. I guess we currently haven't had a situation like that. So I guess if you have a situation where you're working to board a merchant and there's an ADP rep involved, get in touch with us and we can certainly kind of help navigate that. We're happy to do whatever we have to there to either make sure we get the deal done or make sure everybody comes out ahead on that one. So if you have a situation like that you want to talk through, you can email me directly. Otherwise, we can kind of take them as they come.
Sounds great. Thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Stephen. Any other questions out there around the credit, around ADP, around anything that might help you guys win out in the field? I'm happy to help answer those questions along with Brandon.
I'll ask a general one here, and Joe and Brandon, I'll let you guys figure out who the best one to answer. So I know we hear a lot that this is payroll season, right? That kind of the end of the year is the time when people are looking to do that. Can you just help provide a little bit of context as to maybe why that is, and what some of the the easy kind of uncovering of pain point questions that can happen in those conversations this time of year?
Yeah, the most I guess the easiest time to switch payroll companies is at the beginning of the year, just because when you start at the beginning of the year with payroll, you don't have to carry over any balances. It's a clean slate. So with ADP, some of the things that we see that would drive a client to potentially evaluate switching payroll vendors would be one, service, where with Pay Compass, you guys have a dedicated service team that other ADP clients wouldn't have access to. They have to call 1-800-ADP. So that's a preferred partnership with Pay Compass. And then two, preferred pricing, just because the agreement with Pay Compass, being that you guys are reps that work with them exclusively. So dedicated service, preferred pricing, and then obviously the best technology there is when it comes to the payroll platform for small businesses.
Yeah, and I think I'll piggyback on that really quickly because, just in general, this time of year, like Brandon mentioned, you know, everybody's looking at transitioning potentially at the beginning of the year. And so the statistic that we're able to throw out, it's funny because, if you watch CNBC or other news channels and you look at the jobs reports down at the bottom, you'll see that all of them are produced by ADP. And the reason for that is that our name is actually automatic data processing. We do tons of data research, we do tons of surveys. And this time of year in Q4, they find that almost 70% of businesses are evaluating their vendors right now for the upcoming year. So that means there's people that are making decisions every single day about whether they're going to change. I'm sure that's the same thing with clients that you guys are pursuing that are, potentially going to move their vendor over for, the 2024 time period, and you're talking to them right now. It's the same thing with the tax credit conversation. All of these clients are sitting down and talking with their accountants and game planning for the upcoming new year. And they're having these conversations about, how do we save on taxes? How do we cut costs on vendors? How do we get the most out of our relationships that we're currently in? And this is the reason why we're having these conversations now, is because if we're bringing it up, there's a high likelihood that we're going to be reaching people that are already in the current buying mode, which is going to mean that there's going to be success and sales to come along with that.
So I did have a question come through about for the R&D credit when it comes to how the client pays for it. And I know we try and not talk about kind of specific pricing. And Joe, you made passing reference to it as you were talking. Could you just give a little bit more of kind of how the pricing works for and is it similar to, say, like the ERTC?
Sure. Yeah. So it's funny because when I bring up tax credits to anybody these days, they're like, "Oh, ERTC," and I'm like, "Yeah, no. Yes, they are tax credits, but they are very different from one another." And there is a similar billing in the sense that if the particular vendor who's doing the ERC was doing it in a reputable manner, there's a chance that they were doing it on a contingency fee, which is similar to kind of what we do. Is we have a contingency fee structure when it comes to the payment for what we do. What I typically like to say is that success-based fee, meaning that our job and our goal is to maximize that credit as much as humanly possible for the client, which ultimately, if we're able to maximize it within the bounds of the law and get them more money back, that means that ultimately our fee is also going to be higher based on that. So we have incentive to make sure that everybody wins in terms of that fee. But the nice thing about that fee is that it's all inclusive of the audit support, of the other aspects of protecting the credit that we've delivered. When it comes to how the payments are structured, it's essentially once the credit package is delivered to the client, that's what then triggers the invoicing. So as I mentioned, it's a success-based fee. It's a risk-free analysis. If we get all the way to the end of the package delivery and they decide not to take it, then that's their prerogative and they're not going to be billed. So at the end of the day, they have a lot of autonomy to decide how and where and when they want the credit to be delivered. And we are doing so based off of a success-based fee. Hopefully that helps answer the question a little bit better.
Yeah, I think that was great. Thank you for that. What other questions do we have, guys? I want to make sure that we everybody's had an opportunity to ask without dragging it out longer than we need to.
Hey, so looking for maybe just some advice. I know myself, I can't speak for everybody on the line, but novice to payroll sales, merchant processing expertise, probably a lot can relate, but how would you recommend that we maybe position this to clients when we're ourselves maybe not the payroll expert per se, but looking to create stickier relationships and diversify ourselves outside of just credit card processing. Any advice there?
Brandon, I'm not sure if you have any wisdom there. I know I have a few pieces I can add.
Yeah, I mean, as far as sticky products, I mean, the more things that they're going to you for I guess, product expertise, I think that definitely makes it more sticky for the relationship with you and the client. Again, like when you're recommending ADP and this other tool in your bag, this is something that they're getting, the best product in the industry when it comes to payroll, and then all the other things that ADP can do beyond just tax credits, health insurance, workers' comp, the list goes on. So just being able to offer these types of things as you being their rep, I think that would make it, a little more sticky for them going to you for, one-stop shop for everything.
And if they are, and if they kind of already feel that they have that need handled, if they work with a CPA or somebody like that, how do we, bridge the gap, right? Like I'm not trying to be their CPA or their,
Payroll guy.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think Evan, it's a great question because it's we're in a partnership together, and this might not be your expertise. I think at the end of the day, it's instead of you selling the product to them or trying to oversell the product to them, if you will, it's more about selling just how great of a guy Brandon is or how great of a guy I am. Obviously, I'm not trying to tell you to toot my own horn here, but I'm just saying like we're going to be a really great wealth of expertise that they can lean on. And at a worst case scenario, having Brandon as a contact is worth their time to have a 5-minute conversation, just to introduce himself, kind of know what they're doing. And then if things change in the future, then, obviously they have a point of contact at ADP through you at Pay Compass, or they know they're going to get preferred pricing, right? So a lot of times people are going to buy from people they like. If you're selling Brandon more than you're selling the actual product, you're going to probably win at a higher clip because people are going to want to work with people that ultimately they like. So if they like you a lot and you recommend the guy, they're probably going to go give him a chance for 5 to 10 minutes, even if they are in a good situation.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Where is our pricing for us? Do we have a website that has our preferred pricing for the regular payroll?
Hey, Brandon, I can get that for you. We actually have a separate pricing sheet that's specifically for payroll. So I'm happy to shoot that over to you and we can talk through anything there.
Yeah, because I mean, when I worked for Heartland, it was fun when I came across ADP because I just felt like they were so high on their cost and we were so much cheaper. And I understand that things have changed a lot since then. And I used to love selling payroll because if I got them on payroll, it was like I'm never going to lose their credit card processing. I mean, we just wrapped them up right there. But and it just seems so easy once you just basically onboarded them, correctly. You just got their documents and sent it in, and it was done. It was just very easy to do. So I'm kind of looking forward to all this.
Yeah, I think you'll have that same experience here. That's kind of been the experience that Junior and I have had with several of the customers that we've boarded is once we get them boarded and ready to go, then everything just kind of runs seamlessly. We have had some customers that we've had to do a little bit more hand holding with, but for the most part, the customers just kind of take it and run. It's a pretty easy system for them to utilize, get any reporting and run their payrolls out of. So I think you'll find a very similar experience here.
Great questions. Thank you, Evan and Brandon, for those questions. What other questions do we have before we let our ADP guys ride off into the sunset?
I have one more question. Do we have does ADP have unlimited payrolls where you just charge, the customer per per employee per month? Or is it every time they run in a payroll, they get hit again? How does that
Yeah,
work?
so our pricing, Brandon, we have a monthly fee, and then it's a per employee fee. So one cost per the employees for the entire month. So whatever you set that pricing for is basically what we base that off of. And then you'll see on the pricing sheet when I shoot that over to you, any additional addendums that are added, time and attendance, anything like that, also billed once a month.
Gotcha.
All right. Thanks for those, Brandon. I appreciate the questions. Give everybody just one more minute here. Again, you can drop those in the chat or feel free to unmute yourself.
I got one more dumb question. As far as like qualifying and sending somebody in to like for the R&D, like I don't want to waste any time. And like I have a restaurant and they're pretty innovative, but I wouldn't see a restaurant being somebody that's done any sort of R&D. Am I being naive on that? Because I mean, I don't want to overlook something and not realize, hey, that would have been somebody good to turn in a lead on.
Yeah, I mean, restaurants are definitely going to be probably the lower percentage play when it comes to like actual, R&D using some of those hard sciences. Now, where we have seen success with R&D with restaurants is if they're developing software or they're developing an app for their business so that they can do to-go orders or other things like that. So, them being really we'll say them being really experimental in the kitchen probably isn't going to be an R&D fit, but them being more on the aspect of maybe software or them developing a particular cooking process, those things might be things that we can look into. But again, if you ever have questions, there is no dumb question. Feel free to just pop me up, send me an email, give me a call, text message, whatever, and just be like, hey, I've got this client. This is what they're doing. Want to see if it's worth it. By all means, shoot me an email, and I'm more than happy to take a look at it and respond back.
Cool. Thank you.
And just wanted to add real quick in terms of any additional questions outside of this meeting. About 3 or 4 months ago, we set up an email internally here at PayCompass for payroll. So if you have any questions about prospective customers, or if you have a current customer that you have questions to, you can email payroll@paycompass.com, and Junior and I manage that inbox, and we can reach out, get you taken care of there. So just wanted to make sure everybody was aware of that email.
Perfect. Thank you, Grant. Thanks, Brandon, for the questions. This is where I do my stall a little bit before I end things, but I'm feeling pretty good about it. Joe and Brandon from ADP, thank you guys. This has been really, really good. I appreciate you all sharing with us today, bringing your perspective and your expertise. Again, I'll reiterate the email address that Grant just shared, or feel free to reach out to Grant or Junior directly. If you've got questions, they can connect you or kind of serve as the internal resource with Joe and Brandon for any of this. And it's payroll selling season. So if you haven't dipped your toe in, or if you've only done it at wherever you were at last, give it a shot, because it's always a great way to add some stickiness to the accounts and a little bit of money on the side as well. So Joe and Brandon, thank you. Appreciate it. Grant, thank you for being a part of this as well. We will have a coffee with closers next week. I know it's Thanksgiving week, but we'll still get together next Tuesday, and then we'll be doing statement analysis in 2 weeks with Justin. So have a fantastic rest of your day, rest of your Tuesday, and we'll see you guys again next week. Thanks, everybody.